You know, in some countries, being overweight is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, CNN's Nadia Bilcek is about to take us to a few places where bigger is definitely better. We spend so much time here in the U.S. obsessing over our weight, but did you know some countries actually embrace the extra padding? In fact, this year's World Health Organization list of the top 10 fattest countries, and the U.S., if you can believe this, is close to the bottom. So let's bring in CNN editorial producer Nadia Bilcek. She's working with me on this one. And where are these countries where being bigger is better, more beautiful, or just sort of, I guess, a sign of maybe wealth or something, right?
Absolutely. Now, before we even get to that, I have to comment on the pink top to say to you that I only really met you yesterday and already we're in sync.
We are literally wearing the exact same top.
Exactly. And I also complimented you yesterday on losing weight. And yet in Nauru, which is a Pacific island, which is #1 on the World Health Organization's list of fattest countries. Now, this is by percentage. So let's look at what fat means according to WHO. So that means your BMI, your body mass index, is over 25% to be overweight, over 29 to 30% to be considered obese. Now, it's a little more complex than that because you and I could actually weigh the same, but one of us, hardly though, look how tiny she is.
Yeah.
But anyway, you could have more muscle than I do and therefore have a lower BMI even if we weighed the same. So it's a bit more complex, but let's say it's height to weight ratio. So in Nauru, they have 95% of the population is overweight. And it's due to the fact that there's a more Western diet, but also fattening ceremonies.
Really?
They want their young women to be as voluptuous and plump as possible. And that's not the only country that has fattening ceremonies.
We kind of just had one ourselves with Thanksgiving, right? But this is a very structured ceremony.
This is structured, and on Thanksgiving we weren't force-fed, hopefully,
yes.
and we may have
goodness.
felt it. But what they do, like in Mauritania, which is a West African country, they literally have fattening ceremonies where they force-feed the women. They give them up to 16,000 calories a day.
What are they feeding them?
They feed them things like coconut and peanuts and coconut oil and dates. Now, you can imagine how much of that you have to eat. So for young women doing this, they often gag. They are really forced to do it. They're often beaten to have to put on this amount of weight. But the idea is that if you are plump, you appear to be affluent. And you appear to come from a good family. And then once you get married, you want to stay plump because that means that your husband is treating you well.
But it's on the opposite side of the spectrum from sort of, I guess you could say, the torture in a way that many women go through in the U.S. and similar countries to stay thin.
You're right. You're so right, Brownie. It's equally torturous because you can have someone who's got a naturally slim build who is force-fed, and yet here we often force diet. So the ironies of the world, isn't it? But interestingly enough, Kuwait was also very high on the list of the world's fattest countries because Kuwait used to be a Bedouin culture and now has changed very much with the oil discovery to much more Western food. Also, some of the work that people used to do in Kuwait, now you've got day laborers to do. So you look at the change in societies. But according to the World Health Organization, we are genetically disposed to want sugar, fat, and salt. So we obviously train ourselves not to, but that's our predisposition. So hence the world's fattest countries. America is 8 or 9 on their list.
Okay.
But
I can tell you that's my predisposition. Who doesn't want the sugar and the salty treats? But so if you're in these countries and you say to a woman, you wouldn't say to a woman, oh, you're looking so thin. You wouldn't say that. That would be an insult.
In certain countries, in certain African countries, certainly in Nauru, which tops the list, being really overweight, and we're talking about having rolls, is far more attractive. Now, there are some websites here in America where there is a penchant for the larger woman, but certainly mainstream is to look like you do.
I thank you, Nadia, and like you, I very much appreciate that. Nadia Bilcek, very interesting information.
We'll talk more about it at 8, because there's so many other facts that have come out of this particular study.
Okay, great. We'll talk about it next hour. Thank you so much.